Thanks everybody for joining us today in the CALS workshop. This is our last CALS workshop for 2021. And we are joined today by Anthony Buckner, webinar extraordinaire. He's going to give us all the rundown on how to best run multi-streaming Zoom webinar sessions on a variety of platforms. I ask that all of you participate and ask questions, so that's how we can all become better informed. And Anthony's going to introduce himself. Take it away, Anthony.
All right, thank you, Janine. So my name is Anthony Buckner. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I work for the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences IT department, CALS IT for short. I am a technology support specialist, and I have been at NC State going on 9 years. And so I'm really excited all of you are here today. As Janine mentioned, this is going to be pretty open. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time, ask your questions. I'm here to help benefit you. I know how to run this stuff, so I want to help make sure you can do it in the future. I do have a few slides, and I'll share my screen based on the questions that were submitted. So we'll go through that again, interrupt at any time. And then we'll also do a live demo. I have a laptop here that I've connected to my computer, and I will share my screen of my laptop with y'all, and we'll go through all the different things that I can think of. So with that, I'm going to share the PowerPoint. All right, so as I said, my name is Anthony Buckner, and we're going to jump right into this. Is mainly about Zoom in particular. We're going to talk about Zoom webinars and Zoom meetings. So first question that we get asked a lot, what is the difference between a Zoom webinar and a Zoom meeting? So this is actually pulled directly off of Zoom's website. So I copied and pasted. We're going to read it real quick, and at the very bottom is a link to the full comparison chart from Zoom. And again, these slides will be shared with you. Actually, at the very end, and again, you'll be able to go in and look at these links. So the meeting and webinar platform offers similar features and functionality, but have some key differences. Meetings are designed to be collaborative events with all participants being able to share, screen share, turn on their video and audio, and see who else is in attendance. Webinars are designed so that the host and any designated panelist can share their video, audio, and screen. Webinars allow view-only attendees. They have the ability to interact via Q&A, chat, or by answering poll questions. The host can also unmute attendees. Attendees in the webinar cannot rename themselves, and webinars do not have the ability to do breakout sessions. So that's kind of a real quick, like I said, directly from Zoom's website, the differences between a Zoom webinar and a Zoom meeting. And like I said, we'll share the presentation. That link at the very bottom gives you a good matrices of all the differences a meeting can do versus a webinar. So with that, I'll talk about how you can acquire a Zoom webinar. So everyone at NC State has a pro Zoom account, which can host 300 connections. Delta is the Zoom license manager, and they've licensed faculty, staff, and students. An additional feature is Zoom webinar. So we have CALS IT has a single 500 connection Zoom webinar license, and we have it set up so that it can be borrowed. So if you do want to use our webinar license, there is a special project request form located at go.ncsu.edu/CALSIT, one word, -projects. And from there, kind of give you an idea of different things you can request, one of them being the Zoom webinar license. Typically, we need 3 to 5 business days to get everything set up appropriately. So as always, be sure to plan ahead. If you think you're going to do a Zoom webinar, make sure to engage us. It is on a first come, first served basis. So it does get used pretty heavily. So make sure if you have an event in mind that you want to use it, get the request submitted early so we can make sure the webinar license can be used. There is the option to purchase a webinar license, and it is approximately $290 per year. And we can help you engage Delta to purchase a license. We will link it to a generic Google account, and that account is what will manage the Zoom webinars. We have a few departments who have already purchased their own. Precious Department of Poultry Science They have their own Zoom webinar in CARS, the research office. We just got them set up 3 weeks ago. So if you do think you're going to host webinars pretty regularly, we recommend buying your own license. It also gives you more functionality that you won't get from the borrowed license. So on that, there is some limited functionality when we let you borrow it. It technically makes you a alternate host, not a full host. So the ability to generate reports, add or remove panelists, and getting access to the cloud recording is limited to those of us here in CALS IT. We do share those out, but you do have to engage us. I would like to see the registration report for our current webinar. So we have to go in, generate the report, and typically I create a Google folder. We share that folder with all those who need access, and I dump all the reports. So in webinar, you have a registration report if you enable Zoom registration, have an attendee report. So day of, everyone who attended. There's a Q&A report. So it does take all the questions that were answered in the Q&A, they get dumped into a report, and it's generated there. So those are some reports that you get to see from the webinar function. So with that, I'll take a quick break and allow for questions, because next we're going to talk about Zoom and YouTube. So any questions about the differences between Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar, or how to borrow the Zoom webinar license?
Anthony, thanks, Julie. Yeah, talk.
Sorry. Hey, Anthony, this is Julie, and I'm with Extension. Do you know if EIT offers, like you have your project request form, do you know if EIT offers that for Extension?
EIT has a large meeting license you can borrow. I do not believe they have a webinar.
Okay.
They have their own process. A large meeting is a traditional Zoom meeting, but if you need more than 300 connections, I believe Extension has a 500 and 1,000 connection large meeting license.
Okay. I guess my other question would be, can you track who participates in a webinar? Like, can you see who's tuning in?
Yep. So the attendance report that you generate, it lets you know who is joined for how long. So it does track that. And if they like leave and then rejoin and leave and rejoin, it tracks the duration of the full time they were in there. And actually, I mean, since we're talking, I'm going to do a new quick share, and I'll share my laptop, and I can actually show you an example report. So here I'm on webinar. Again, we have the different reports that I can generate: registration, attendee, performance, Q&A, poll, and survey. So if I do an attendee report, let's jump back a week. We had a couple webinars. Let's just pick this one. So they had 53 unique views, 78 total. Maximum concurrent views is 46, but I'll generate a report. So here, it's a little bigger. Here you have the panelists at the very top. It tells you when they joined, the time they left, time in session. And again, under here, you see then the attendee details. Again, username, first name, last name, email. Any information that was collected if you had registration enabled gets shown here. But then again, it will show you the time they joined, the time they left, and the amount of time they were in this session in minutes. So that's an example of an attendee report. Any other questions about this? I think I saw Claudia raised your hand. You're free to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you, Anthony. I was wondering, you said that we could buy the license for $290. And if we should go through you or CALS IT to set up a webinar, is there a charge for the department to have a webinar through you guys?
So if you borrow the license, there's no charge. But again, it's a first come, first served, and there's some limited functionality. So if you purchase your own license, you have full control over how you use it. You can generate your own reports. You can create all the polls. You can add and remove panelists. So that's kind of you can borrow ours for free as long as it's available with some limited functionality, or purchase your own with a yearly subscription. Great questions. Anything else? I am not monitoring chat. I will say I am horrible at monitoring the text chat.
So Emma has a question. Would we have access to customize the Zoom registration through the borrowed license?
So when you submit the form, this is where we ask that you do submit it well in advance. We do have the option when we create your webinar, I will ask you questions so we can enable registration. So here, just like anything else, I click webinars, I can title it, put a description, choose when, the duration. Here I can enable the registration. We always tend to enable Q&A in the practice session. So this is a good time to talk about the practice session. In Zoom webinar, panelists can join and co-hosts can join before anyone else. So when we enable the practice session, those who can turn on their video can join the webinar early at any time really before the scheduled start time. They can go in, check screen sharing, get a lay of the land. You can control, one of the benefits of the webinar is you can control the layout of the webinar for your attendees. So if you want them to see speaker view, gallery view, side-by-side, gallery view, side-by-side, speaker view, you have that control as a meeting host or co-host. But in the practice session, it gives you a chance to go in. You'll see, actually, we can just start one. See what it'll tell you. So I'll go ahead and schedule this webinar. But once we have it set up to the question under the registration, we can go in and add custom questions. So we'll engage you, get what you want the registration to have, first name, last name, make it required, organization, job title, and then of course we can add a bunch of custom questions that and make them either required or not in the registration. You should share that link and you can have people register. If you do use the Zoom registration, we have the ability to send reminders. We can do under email settings, we'll ask the contact email should there be questions. And then under the reminder, we can send them 1 hour, 1 day, and 1 week before the scheduled start time and end date. So they get an automated email from Zoom that includes the link to join the webinar. And again, they can get a maximum of 3 reminders, the 1 hour, the 1 day, or 1 week, or any combination of those 3. We also have the ability to send follow-up emails to the attendees, as well as any people who registered but didn't attend. So under here, we can say, send a follow-up email. We can send it up to 7 days after the event ended. We can set the subject and then add links to the recording. If you have a survey from Qualtrics, we can add that. Zoom also has the ability to send a survey, so you can use Zoom's ability to use a survey. But that's one of those, like, there's a lot of back-end management of that. So we tend to, if you want to use surveys, recommend getting your own license. But if it is a one-off, pretty big event, we could probably work with you to set up a survey. But again, here you can send the follow-up to the attendees and a slightly different one, different verbiage for those. Sorry, we missed you. Here's the recording. And again, those can be sent 1 day up to 7 days after the event.
And Anthony, I had a question about, are you done with this part? I'm sorry.
I believe so, yes.
So using like our regular rooms, like this room that we're in right now, is registration an option for like individual, or is it only an option for the webinars?
No, it is available both meetings and webinars. So here I'm under the meetings tab. So this is a regular Zoom meeting. Everyone has access to this. So if you go to ncsu.zoom.us, you log in through Shibboleth, you'll have access to the meeting. So here we can schedule a new meeting. Again, you name it, but right here, registration check required. So once you have everything set and you hit save, on this next screen, you have where you can manage your registration. So under registration options, hit edit. Here you can automatically approve everyone who registers. You can make it where you have to manually approve everyone. You can send a notification to yourself every time someone joins. And other options, close the registration after the event closes. Recommend doing that because once the webinar is over, and there's nothing for them to join. You can, if you know you only have 300 seat license, I recommend clicking this and limiting it to only 300 people can register. You can allow them to join from multiple devices, and you have also the option to show social media. And then the questions, again, this is where you choose what fields are in that registration form, which ones are required. And then you can add your custom questions. One thing I'll note, because I do this every time, you make your new question, you make sure to hit the create button. If I'm going to add one question and I put it in here and then I hit save all, because I didn't actually create the question wasn't created. It tricks me up every time. So make sure you hit create and then hit save all. So now if you see the link, this is the link you would share to everyone, and it takes them to the registration page. So here, meeting registration, my meeting, I asked for this, and then here's my custom question, hello. When I click register, because I have automatic approval enabled, it would approve them and they would get an instant message or instant email with the link to join the regular Zoom meeting. Under the email settings, again, this is where you can say where this one's mainly, if you have questions, please send them to, because this is our generic account, CALS IT Service Desk. Under branding, here you can add a banner or logo. We have a few more options on our webinar. So I'll go back over to webinar. We can add up to 10 speakers. We can add a photo, bio. Actually, let's go. I'll show you a good one where we did fill all that out. So under branding, here we added, they had 4 panelists. We also changed the theme to be NC State colors. I believe.
And this is still all available under just our individual licenses?
Everything but the speaker panel, yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's closed, so I can't show you the photos. But on the webinar, we can add speakers. Under normal Zoom, you can only add a banner and a logo. And here it tells you the recommended sizes. A banner goes across the top, a logo is a smaller, and it will be included in the emails. So this is a regular meeting. Any other questions?
I think Carrie has a question.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, this is great, Anthony. Thanks for walking through some of this. My question is, well, I have a specific question. So one, when we talked about these limitations of numbers, is that actually registrations or is that attendees? Because we usually, so, I mean, can you say you can register up to 500 people, but only 300 can come in? I mean, is that, or is it, you know what I mean? So it's a seat limited at the time of the meeting, or is it actually registration?
So yes, good question. If you limit the registration, so yeah, most people don't attend. So the limit is on the number of connections. So the regular NCSU Zoom has a limit of 300 remote connections.
Okay.
But if you say you have 20% of people who register don't show up, you could then allow more people to register with the expectation 20% of them are not, as long as that number is still at or below 300.
But if they try to come in, they're just not going to get a seat if they come in late, right? I mean, so trying to weigh why we would limit it if, you know, because then they can have access to the recording or whatever. So anyway, that's something to think about. So the other question that I have is sort of more broad, because we do some webinars in the Southeast Climate Adaptation Science Center, and we have always used Zoom meetings, and in part, although recognize that, you know, I think that some of the reasons for doing webinars both scale, and that's, we don't usually get to that scale, but also some kind of these security features that you have fewer of in the meeting frame. But I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of, well, I guess 2 things. One is there's no way in a webinar to allow people to actually interact other than the panelists and the hosts. Is that right? So that you wouldn't have the option to say, oh, okay, I'm going to open it up to so-and-so to make a comment if they've asked a question. There is no way to do that in the webinar frame. Is that right?
All right, so technically, as a host, you are allowed to, you can promote an attendee to a panelist.
Okay.
So
okay.
if someone was in attendance and you were like, I wanted them to be able to turn on their video, you can promote them to panelist.
Okay.
It will then pop up on their screen saying they want to promote you. They have the option to deny it. But once
Mhm.
they click I accept, they'll rejoin the Zoom as a panelist with the ability to turn on their camera and unmute themselves.
And I'm okay. Okay.
You also, you can also allow attendees to unmute themselves, but you have to grant them that permission. So here, actually, I will, to give you an example, I'll
Yeah.
start this webinar.
Mhm.
So here we are, you get this, you're in practice session.
Mhm.
You do have to choose to broadcast or start the webinar. And that's when it allows those waiting, the attendees waiting, to join in.
So the release, so that's the invite all from the waiting room equivalent in the meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
And then so here under our participants tab, you'll have two options, panelists and then attendees.
Mm-hmm.
So those who have joined via attendees, when you hover over their name, you'll see an option to allow unmute, and that will let them turn on their microphone and they can ask a question. Or under more, you'll see an option to promote to panelists, and that will then let them turn on their video. But it is, you'll have to, one at a time. You couldn't just blanket let everyone unmute, like choose to unmute themselves.
Okay. But
And then
unmuting, the video is less important than the being able to speak to ask a question. So that
yeah,
would
I
be
think then a good etiquette you could do, what I have done in other scenarios we've used the webinar feature for the virtual graduations. And one way you can do it, the way I have done it is, if someone would like to say something, we have them raise their hand in Zoom.
Mhm.
Those who have raised their hand go, in the order they raise their hand, go to the top of the attendees list. And then I go one by one and I click allow to unmute, let them speak. When they mute, I then move to the next person. So that it would be a way to kind of systematically allow more than one person to speak. You'll just have to have someone dedicated to monitoring the attendee side of the participant and raising and lowering hands as we go.
Right.
And I think we have a question from Adrian.
Okay.
I like the option. We like the option where in the webinar where you can send the reminder emails. But in the meetings option, is there a way to send that option?
As long as you've had registration enabled,
Yeah.
I believe. So they'll get it upon registration, but I don't believe they'll get reminders under a regular Zoom. So that's one of the, yeah, that is the one difference in a webinar versus meeting registration.
Okay. All right. Because that's what we've been trying to figure out. I think we've just had to like resend the confirmation email, which kind of, I don't know if it confuses people, but we like how it looks a little bit more professional to send the reminder emails, but through like the webinar ones. But we like the interaction that the regular one does that you can do. We want to mix and match of both of them. But.
Of course. So what I would recommend, Zoom is really good. They've gone public. If you go to the Zoom's website, and then there's I believe it's under support. Somewhere on their website, you can provide feedback. And I would say the more people that submit something like that, the more likely that the more priority they give it. So we do this a lot with Google because we're a Google Workspace. If there's a feature we really want, submit a request to them and then have people go upvote it in the community. And if enough people want it, they tend to give it a little bit more priority.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then I think Claudia had another question.
All right.
Yes, thank you. Anthony, you had said that it's limited to 300 attendees, but then there was a checkbox that you could join by multiple devices. So if I do join by my computer and then my cell phone at the same time, is that considered 2 attendees or 1?
That's 2. It's number of connections. So you're technically connected twice. So that takes up 2 of your 300 connections.
Thank you.
Can I jump in while you have this screen up, Anthony? And I put this in the chat. So can you just address this option to convert this meeting to a webinar? What actually happens there? Can we even do that without getting the license, or the differences between those 2 options?
Yeah. So this is only an option that I see. So I'm logged into our generic account, which has the webinar option. So any meeting I schedule with this generic account, I can easily convert it to a webinar. And I believe I can also, again, if I wasn't in this one, I can convert a webinar to a meeting, but it's only an option because I'm logged into the generic account that has the webinar feature. So if I log in with my NC State version, and I click on a meeting, you'll see the option, but you cannot convert because you do not have the webinar feature. And if I click on webinar, I don't have the license on my NCSU named account, so I can't convert it. It does look like they're allowing 30-minute webinars for testing for fun. I didn't see that. Something new Zoom's done. But yeah, so you'll see the option, but it won't convert if you don't have the license.
Gotcha. Okay.
If I go back to Zoom and I log in with our generic, and I click on this one and click convert, it's going to let me convert it without any issue.
Okay.
Good questions. Anyone else? All right. Well, I'm going to move forward, but again, ask any questions. So let me switch my screen again to my PowerPoint. So I actually hosted a 30-minute training April of last year on how to do Zoom to YouTube. I've linked it in the last slide under our resource tab. I would encourage you to go watch it. I'm going to briefly go over it since we're already 30 minutes in, just to kind of real high level. If you want like a live demo, step by step, I encourage you to go watch my other training video. So Zoom to YouTube, what you need a YouTube channel with live streaming enabled. So if you don't have an account, it does take YouTube about 24 hours to convert any YouTube channel or account into live streaming. We do recommend creating a NCSU generic account if you want a true YouTube channel. And we again we can help you create one of those, but it's through web registry. You can create a generic account. So we have CALS IT service desk at ncsu.edu. It is a full-on Gmail account, but it also has access to Google Drive and YouTube. And on that YouTube channel, you can then host a whole bunch of content, and it's branded to a single generic. So if anyone leaves, so if I leave and I have content in my YouTube channel, it will disappear. But because it's a generic account, multiple people have access to it. It doesn't go away as an employee leaves. And it's a good way just to, like I said, keep retention of content regardless of who works. And it's a way to brand.
Anthony, do you know what they do in that 24-hour time? Like, is there anything that could keep the permission from being allowed, or?
I haven't seen it. I believe there are scripts on YouTube's backend that just has to link your account with their streaming servers. Like I said, I have not seen anyone. It's a fully automated process. I think they have nightly script cron jobs that say, all right, this account can now access our streaming servers. So again, so that's one of the first things. Plan ahead. If you want to live stream to YouTube, have a again, I recommend a generic account, but you can use any NCSU account has access to YouTube. Just going in and enable live streaming. In Zoom, you need to enable custom live streaming. And we say custom live streaming, this allows you to schedule the YouTube stream in advance. Because in Zoom, you'll see an option under more, live stream on YouTube. If you choose that option, you have to create the YouTube live stream on the fly. So naturally, when most people, you send out your links to Zoom, you also send out links to your YouTube. If you don't use the custom live streaming, you can't provide that link in advance. So they'd have to join Zoom, and Zoom can fall over. You can have a message if you enable the live stream. If you reach capacity in Zoom, send them to YouTube. So in order for that to work, you have to live stream to YouTube. But again, you don't have the link in advance. So you get to your 300, and then anyone who joins afterwards will be prompted to move to YouTube. That's where that function works the best. But if you want to allow people to join the Zoom or YouTube, you want to use the custom live streaming service. And then optionally, you can create an NCSU Go link. It's just a good way to have a pretty URL that you can, behind the scenes, change the target URL. So an example we use for the CALS Town Hall, we have that one Go link, and then I have access to that Go link, and every time we schedule a new Zoom, I log in and I change the Zoom link in the back end, but everyone just has to use the Go link. It also gives you some cool analytics. You can see how many times someone's visited the URL. You can add tracking. If you then post it to Twitter, you can add, oh, these people came to my site from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything like that. So here are the steps to enable the live streaming on your Zoom account. Just log into Zoom. You'd click onto the settings, go into the end meeting advanced, and there's a little checkbox that says allow live stream meetings, and you want to just check custom live streaming. And then on the YouTube side, you go to studio.youtube.com. You'll click on the big red, click on the big red create button in the upper right, click on go live. If your account is not allowed to live stream, you'll get a notification. We're gonna set it up for live streaming in 24 hours. And then that will get your account set up for live streaming. And then from there, you can schedule your Zoom, your live stream to YouTube. And then here's where we bring it all together. You create and schedule your Zoom meeting at ncsu.zoom.us. You create your YouTube live event at studio.youtube.com. I do recommend selecting the ultra low latency setting in YouTube. The delay between Zoom and YouTube is about 10 seconds versus 60 seconds if you use normal latency. And then in the Zoom web portal, you want to, in the scheduled meeting title, you'll click on live streaming, configure custom live streaming service. And then dialog will ask you for three links: your stream URL, your stream key, and the live streaming page URL. Again, all that's right there on the Zoom page or the YouTube page. Optionally, creating multiple Go links, one that links you to the Zoom meeting and one that takes you to the YouTube video, and then sharing the Go links with your audience. So any communication you use, so use the Go links instead of the direct links in the event. For some reason, you need to change the YouTube link, or for some reason, you need to change the Zoom link. And then day of your event, all you have to do is bring up YouTube Studio, the live control center. And then under more, you click live on custom streaming service in Zoom. It will then start streaming to YouTube, and then in the YouTube control room, you just have to hit go live. And I think I can do it really fast, at least so you can see the pages. So again, I will go to meetings. I'll schedule a meeting. I'll hit save. So you'll see your meeting. You'll click on the title of the meeting. You'll scroll down. You'll see this live streaming option. And then configure custom streaming services, here's where it asks you those 3 questions. So if I go over here to YouTube, so this is the CALS YouTube channel. I'm in studio.youtube.com. I'll click create, go live. And then I'm going to schedule a stream. Because we've done previous ones, it lets you choose a previous setting. So I'm going to go ahead and do one of our departmental streams and reuse those settings. I'll ask you for the title, description, your category, a thumbnail, basic questions you'll fill out. Again, you can enable live chat, replay, who can send messages, again, answer all the questions. If you're not going to moderate the chat, I would definitely disable these functions, because if you get a lot of profanity, YouTube might kill your stream. So not allowing comments and not allowing live chat, if you're not going to actively monitor the YouTube stream, is definitely the right way to go. It's just a passive, you can watch it live kind of setup. So hit next. Again, set your visibility. Usually we list our stuff unlisted so it doesn't show up on the CALS YouTube list. And then you set your scheduled time. So I'll hit done. So this is the control room. So here's where you get your stream key, your stream URL. And then if you hit the little up arrow share icon, this is where you get your stream URL. So stream URL, I'm sorry, the live streaming page URL. So if I copy the stream key to the clipboard, I paste it, I copy the stream URL, the first one, you don't need the backup. I paste that here, and then I click up here, click this icon to copy to my clipboard, and I Control V again and hit save. I have now created a custom live stream. So if I start this meeting, I click the more icon, live on custom streaming service. It's going to tell you it's being live streamed. So here it's Zoom is sending it to YouTube. All right, y'all are going to see my nose view. So now if I go to YouTube Control Center, here in a few seconds, you'll see the YouTube live stream, and it's letting you know you need to go live. So if I hit go live, in a few seconds, YouTube will now be live with my meeting, and you'll get to see my nose. So
Anthony, this is like related but unrelated. Like, how did you learn all of this?
I click buttons. I'm never afraid to click a button. So it's mostly trial and error. Like I said, click a button. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, try again. All right, and so that is streaming to YouTube. I'm gonna turn off my nose so you don't have to look at it anymore. And I'm gonna stop the live stream to YouTube. And that's it. So that was Zoom and YouTube Live. So I will go back to my PowerPoint. The last slide again is just, here's some of the online resources. So the first link, this is how I learned, this is where I learned.
1 second before we move on, Carrie has another question.
Yeah, shoot.
Yeah, so this is like a fundamental question. So why live stream? What's the benefit of live streaming other than if you go over capacity on your, and you need people to see that? I mean, are there some benefits to how it's to the recording and the transcript that's generated? Or I guess I'm just trying to get my mind around why.
Yeah,
sense.
So the big thing is the capacity. But we also have a fair number of people who don't want to actively participate or may be encouraged to participate. So example, when we've done the student graduations, we've done webinar, we invite the students to join the webinar, but for friends and family, they're shared the YouTube link. So it's a way for them to passively watch. It also, it's an easier platform. So like you can go to YouTube on most televisions now, and they could stream the Zoom straight to their television. So they don't have to have a computer hooked up to their TV. Some people are just, they find it's an easier way to engage with some people who may have a technology barrier. You don't have to download a special app from Zoom, know how to use it. Most people are familiar with YouTube at this point. So it's more, if you definitely want a bigger audience, but maybe less participation, I think it's beneficial to offer a Zoom. And then, so whatever you live stream to Zoom is also immediately available for rewatch. So if you're comfortable with, if ultimately your stuff is going to end up on YouTube, you can just live stream to YouTube. And once the live stream is completed, if you're not going to do any post-production, post-editing, the YouTube stream is right there ready to rewatch. So those are kind of some of the benefits. Again, knowing your audience, what you think would be most beneficial. And then the technology barrier, I think, is a big one. I'm going to send you this YouTube link versus here's how to join a Zoom.
Yeah, I fair. But it's completely anonymous. There's no way to track who's watching your YouTube as far as metrics.
YouTube does capture metrics. It is a little bit more anonymous. So I'll go back to our studio. Let me switch screens so you can see what I'm doing. That's always helpful. So under content live, come on, YouTube Studio. There we go. So our last town hall, we had 163 views. So if I click on analytics, and then we go to reach, and this was, we'll do the past year. So again, it can give you a breakdown of whether they viewed from a cell phone, whether they watched it from a website. Gives you the number, how much has been viewed. So if people are only watching the first 3 minutes versus the whole thing. But yeah, you won't get granular. I know Sue watched it. I know Bob watched it. Yeah, you won't get that level of analytics.
No, that's great. But you know how many people watched it the day of, I guess you have a sense of that. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Good questions. So yeah, like I said, this last slide is just some online resources. Like I said, the first link here is it's a support article from Zoom. It tells you how to stream a meeting to a YouTube event. The second article is how I learn about the custom live streaming, and it's their preferred method if you want to know the streaming URL in advance. The third link is again to my training video from last April. It goes pretty much what we just did, a much slower pace, and every click through is recorded. And then the last one is again our special projects form where you can request the webinar license. So with that, questions, comments are all welcome. And it looks like we have 15 minutes. That's awesome.
So Anthony, there was some question. Oh, somebody's got their hand raised. Let me see. But I was going to ask about polls. Adrian has a question.
Go for it.
I saw that you had logged in through like a generic account was that for the webinars or was that just for the regular Zoom meetings?
So the generic account is for the webinar.
Okay.
So naturally, if you have webinar, you also get meeting. So that generic account can do regular Zooms as well as webinar, which is why I could do both with my generic account.
But if you don't have webinar, can you do just a regular Zoom meeting with the generic account?
No. Okay. Generic accounts do not automatically get created through. So the NCSU Pro accounts are assigned to an FTE. So yeah, you couldn't have a generic account, only do meetings. You can have a generic account with a webinar and then have the ability to also host regular meetings.
Okay.
But it is a named license, so it's got to be a one-to-one for the most of the standard everyone account.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So what is your opinion on Google Meetup or Hangout, or I forget which one is which, versus, you know, using Zoom?
I mean, it's being a competition. It's adding new features, and it's called, and now it's Meetup, Google Meetup. They've added the ability now to have the reordered video screens. You can do the more tiles like the Brady Bunch. The advantage, it's all browser based. So you don't have to have a Zoom client because we are a Google campus. You can use Google Groups to add people to the meeting and they'll have access. So that's kind of the advantages. Because it is browser based, I have found that it can eat up a lot more resources. So I would say we've seen it crash more than Zoom because Zoom has its own dedicated client and manages resources a little bit better on a computer. Oh, I forgot another question kind of asked. Was about engagement of audience, kind of Zoom etiquette. I am not a professional, but I can tell you things that I have learned and things that I like seeing done in a Zoom webinar or meeting. The first one, setting expectations in the very beginning. I think there should always be a moderator, especially if you're going to do the let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. That doesn't work in Zoom. Everyone's view is different. So I think it's always having a very strong leader and a moderator. It's like, all right, we're going to do introductions. Hi, my name is Anthony. I'm going to go in the order I see people on my screen, and then asking every person to unmute themselves and introduce themselves. Setting expectations again. Do you expect everyone to have their camera on? Do you expect people to be able to unmute or just ask questions in chat? I think all those things you have to be a little more explicit when doing a Zoom versus you can't see, there's no visual cues on I'm about to talk. No, this person's about to talk. And so in Zoom, you have two people try to speak, both stop talking. There's an awkward silence where who decides to go and then they both speak again. And so, yeah, always moderate it. Be willing to call on people. Let them, I'm get out of your comfort zone. If you don't want to speak, you can tell me, but I'm going to probably call on you. The other kind of thing I like to see, at least in Zoom, is allowing nonverbal communication, especially so we'll have meetings where you're expecting to collect feedback from users, allowing, okay, we'll use reactions. I have a motion to approve or deny. If you approve, give me a thumbs up. If you deny, give me a thumbs down, and then have everyone click on the reactions and give me a thumbs up or the red X symbol, letting me know how they want to vote. Because again, it's like having everyone unmute and say that they agree. Just you can't hear it. So I agree. Make sure you use the reactions. Those are a few things that I have seen that I like to see. But again, I am not the expert on that level of stuff. One other kind of trick I wanted to share for those who are looking to do a bit more control in a regular Zoom meeting. So something that we have this is just practicing again, clicking buttons. So if I start a regular Zoom, which I'm already in one, using the security tab can help. So one thing I like to do, if you want a more locked down environment in a regular Zoom, allow participants, I unmute themselves and start video. I do like enabling the waiting room. And then, so what I'll do is I've had the waiting room enabled. I'll start a traditional meeting. I will then go in and I'll set the security in advance where they can't unmute, they can't start their video. under chat, if you click the three dots, you have some options. You can let them chat with no one, only chat with hosts and co-hosts, allow them to chat with everyone, or everyone and anyone directly. Depending on what you're doing, sometimes I'll only let them talk to hosts and co-hosts. This is a regular meeting. By the way, in a webinar, those options are slightly different. It'll say attendees can chat with panelists or everyone. And to know, for the panelist side, the default option and chat for webinars is panelists and hosts. So there's an option for everyone. If you don't select everyone, the attendees don't get the chat. And that's the default setting in webinar. But again, in webinar, you have a similar setting. And again, under view, in the webinar, you have a few more options that tell you attendees view. And that's where you can set their view. But I'll go in and let's say I only want to chat with hosts and co-hosts. And then under screen sharing, I like to only host. So once I've set these settings, I can admit anyone that's in the waiting room, and then you can disable the waiting room as long as you have a passcode enabled on your meeting. This will then let anyone else join, but because they can't turn on their video or unmute themselves, you have full control. And then what I like to do, if you make other people co-hosts, they can turn on their video and they can unmute themselves. So it's a way to kind of have the security that we have in webinar. So hosts and co-hosts in a regular Zoom meeting can share their screen, turn on their video and unmute. But everyone else in this regular Zoom meeting would be unable to turn on their camera or share their screen. So it's kind of like I said, a way to make the regular Zoom a little more webinar-like. Unfortunately, you can't control their view. So it may be worth saying, all right, I encourage everyone to click on the view and select gallery. Again, setting those expectations. Another option I like to do, if we had more than one person, when you have the tiles and there's the three little dots, there's an option to hide non-video participants. And I think all of you would be able to do it. So if you're currently, let me stop sharing. So if everyone clicks on the view in the upper right, you'll see all the grids. So we should have 16. If you pick one that does not have video and hover over their tile, click the three dots, there's an option that says hide non-video participants. And what that will do is then they'll only see tiles with video. This is the default for webinar. So if you do gallery view in a webinar, it only shows everyone with active video feed. But to get that same functionality in a regular meeting, telling everyone to click view gallery and then hide non-video participants. So as people turn the video on and off, the tiles will grow bigger and smaller. And this way you don't have 23 little blocks with only 3 with video. Excellent. Any other questions? We have about 5 minutes. And I know I've thrown a lot of information at you, so please, I understand if you need greater detail on something.
This is Kara. I've asked a lot of questions, so I'll defer if someone else has one.
Well, I had a question, Anthony, we're moving into a hybrid setting where a lot of people are wanting to do more hybrid events. Do you have any best practices for that?
So my candid answer, don't do hybrid. If you're gonna have a virtual option, make it all virtual. I know most people don't like that. The reason I say that, if you're not using a space that is equipped with the correct technology to host a hybrid event, they are a challenge. So if you're gonna have an in-person portion, that in-person space needs to have the technology to adequately hear everyone in the room, see everyone in the room. Otherwise, it's just it's typically you're going to have someone who can't hear someone, or you're going to have multiple people try to join the Zoom while in the room, and that causes nothing but audio issues, audio feedback, echo, everyone can hear. So if you're going to do a hybrid event, all the people that are in the one space, make sure that space is set up to capture everyone in the room, and then making sure no one else in the room joins Zoom, and then letting all the participants join. And then, likely having the host computer that's in the room that has all the microphones and the camera, have that be shown on the projector or the displays in the space. Making sure when you share screen, you do it the right way through Zoom. Share your screen through Zoom on that host computer. It'll show up on the projector and the displays. They'll have the small thumbnail with the active speaker if anyone has questions from remote. But they can be tricky. And then sometimes, like breakout sessions, sometimes it's, if you're going to do breakout sessions, having a space where you can, having your attendees the in-person attendees bring their computer. And then when you break out, making sure they have a space where they can go far away from each other, and encourage headsets with microphones. Because if you try to break out a session and there's 15 people in the room and you break out Zoom, they obviously need to join the Zoom. So they bring their laptop, but if they're all close together, you're going to hear every breakout room, everyone asking questions. And so it's a pretty poor experience. So it's hybrid's tricky.
And Carrie, what was your question?
I put it in the chat, so if it doesn't get dealt with now, it's really just about this post-production. Is, how do you best recommend doing, editing the transcript so you get a good feed in there? Because I've been rolling the live transcript here, and you're not using a lot of jargon, but it still needs, editing. What's the best way to do that?
What I recommend, it is a paid service, and if you want to be fully accessible, you do need to have a professional service do it. So it's called rev.comm. They're reasonably priced. They're on contract with NC State. You send the MP4 of the recording to them, and you pay by the minute. So just expect, here, I can just share one with you real fast. So rev.comm. You can create an account. And what you do is, so if you want a transcript, it's $1.25 per minute, and that is the length of the recording. So you can estimate how much it's going to be. So under my files, we've done every town hall has been submitted. And what it does is a human captions the file. They watch the recording, and they generate, when you submit, if I place a new order for captions, you upload your video file. You choose it, and then you can choose the file, the formats, the file type of the recording. You get a transcript, TXT version, and SRT is what I recommend. Most of the services here on campus, including YouTube, can take that SRT file directly as is. There's VTT, it's another file format. Just checking wherever you're going to post the video, what format they support. SRT, you're pretty much always guaranteed. And like I said, you can get a TXT version. They're really good depending on the length. You can pay more to have it rushed if you want it done in 24 hours. But most of our stuff, we've gotten back in less than 24 hours with normal processing. But most of our stuff is around an hour. But I would recommend, if you want to be truly accessible, it does have to be 99% accurate. And so I think it is worthwhile paying these companies. A human will put on headphones, and their job all day long is just to transcribe. And again, you can provide, if you have, it also makes it easy when you upload this. It'll ask you if you have a script, if there's acronyms that you've used, you can provide them with that so that they know they get it closer to accurate. But again, $1.25 a minute, which is pretty reasonable compared to what most captioning services provide. And it is fully human captioned, and it meets all ADA requirements for full accessibility.
Well, thanks to you, Anthony, so much. Thanks for everybody for coming.
Yes.
We're probably going to host our next CalsComm workshop on January 20th. And one of our graphic designers is going to be giving a Canva tutorial and how to use Canva to the best of your the university's branding criteria. So again, thanks to Anthony, and thanks everybody for joining. I will send out this recording, the slides, and also a questionnaire about what you want to learn about for next year. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.